Hi, my name's Tamryn. I am recovering from some unknown disease. I think I had some sort of virus, but it really fucked with my throat. And so that is why I sound like I've been smoking 20 cigarettes a day. I hope you'll forgive me. Maybe it sounds sultry, maybe it doesn't sound as terrible as I think it does, but yes. But you didn't click on this video to hear about my disease, you clicked on it to hear about the experience of being a mature student. So here we go. Before we get into it, I thought I would explain a bit about my backstory and why I am a mature student and what qualifies one as a mature student, all very important definitions and information. So I am originally from South Africa. I grew up there. I graduated when I was 18. And I decided I wanted to go on a gap year, so I moved to Luxembourg and worked as an au pair there, and then I traveled all around Europe, and then I moved to London, and I thought, hey, this is a really cool place. I like the UK, I want to get my degree here. I think it would open up more doorways for me because I knew I wanted to remain in the Europe area. I knew I didn't really want to move home, which is a whole separate video. But even though I had a British passport because my mom has British nationality, you still have to live in the UK for 3 years to qualify for student loans, which I was not aware of at the time until I applied. And then I realized, shit, if I want to study here, I have to have lived here for 3 years. So that is what I did. I lived here for 3 years because I could not financially afford to go to university on international fees. My parents were not going to financially support me, so it was very much something that I had to resolve myself. And because I'm a very stubborn and determined person, I decided to wait it out. So I lived and worked in London for 2.5 years. Yeah, very formative experience, I must say. And now I am officially studying at the University of Bristol. I'm going into my second year, studying social policy with criminology, should that interest you. That means I'm 23 in my second year, and most people in their second year are 19. That's not old, you might be thinking, or other people might be thinking that's incredibly old. But yeah, the system works really strangely. So anyone who's aged over 21 when they started their degree, undergraduate degree, is a mature student, and anyone who's aged over 25 when they start their master's degree is a mature student. So because I started my undergraduate degree when I was 22, I am, for all intents and purposes, a mature student. I do think that it's such a broad definition and it includes so many different types of people from so many backgrounds. I do not obviously have the same experience as other mature students. There are people who have caring responsibilities, people who have children, people who were working for 10 years before they came to university. So there's a really wide range, and I guess for administration purposes and demographic purposes and understanding statistics, it's important to have that data and to be able to bucket people into one group. But it is wild to me that I, as a 23-year-old, am considered a mature student and I'm put in the same bucket as someone who's studying in their 40s. And I do think that there is a difference, and I do think we would need different support and different help. The mature student network is maybe a bit generic, I don't know. That's just kind of my opinion. But my point of pointing this all out is that throughout this video, this is all obviously very much from my experience / other mature students who I've spoken to at my university. And so it is not an accurate, comprehensive reflection of all the pros and cons one can face as a mature student, because it really depends on your background, your experience, your responsibilities in life, and where you're at, really. So I really think it differs for everyone, but I do think there are some key themes throughout what I mentioned which might be applicable on a grander, larger scale to other people. So that is why I thought I'd make this video. If you are a mature student, I would really encourage you to leave your thoughts below, because I think the more opinions and perspectives we can get, the better. Something I wanted to specifically say before I get into the overall pros and cons is going in at exactly my age, like as a 23-year-old, is like such a difficult age to go into, actually, because in so many ways I've felt like I've lived a lifetime. I've traveled like more than 26 countries, and I've lived in multiple countries, and I have a partner of 3 years, and I've been financially supporting myself since I was 18, and I've had like 5 different jobs over 3 years. So I feel like my maturity levels are definitely above an 18-year-old's, and my mindset is just very different. But I still look young. Like, people can still mistake me for being 18 or 19. And so it's kind of a blessing or a curse, because if I want to blend in and I don't want people to point out that I'm older, or if I don't want to get like weird questions if I'm just like at a club night, yeah, it's nice, I guess, to be able to blend into the crowd, for people to not immediately notice that I, like, quote unquote am different, or like I'm slightly older. But at the same time, it can also mislead people in like what stage of life they think I'm at and where they think I'm at in my mindset, and it's led to like some really awful, awkward interactions. It's also has obviously made it a little bit more difficult to find like my people, but we're gonna get into this. Okay, we're gonna start off on a positive note. All the pros of going to university at an older age. I mean, first of all, the obvious fact that you have more life experience can be so helpful, because it makes like the transition to university like way less overwhelming and way less, I found so many of the admin type things so easy and kind of like straightforward, because I'd done it so many times, like finding a house share, knowing how to split bills, knowing how to do like all the paperwork and admin really easily, like not even like, batting an eye at it, because I've developed all these soft skills and all this life experience. And like other soft skills include like just general time management, and also knowing how to talk to people in a professional manner, like professors or people who work for the university, and having just a better understanding of how systems work can be really helpful. And I think that's super different compared to people who are coming straight from like finishing high school and living with their parents to moving to student accommodation. It can be very overwhelming, very novel, and just a lot. And even just managing all of that when you first start university can be quite overwhelming. But for me, I was just kind of like living life, but also doing a degree. And like for me, it wasn't an adjustment, because I had been living independently previously to this. When you go to university when you're older, you kind of are going with a very specific goal. Like, there is a reason you're choosing to do this. And I think you can have a lot more purpose behind what you're doing than someone who is just going straight from high school into university. And so I also think it means that you take advantage of more of the opportunities presented to you at the university. Like, you're more aware of how cool this is. When I was working 9 to 5, like any extracurriculars I wanted to do in London were so fucking expensive. Any clubs I wanted to do were so expensive, and I didn't really have the time to do them. But now my schedule is way more flexible with like a university schedule, and I also have access to all these really well-priced student offers for all these societies and clubs. And as a mature student, you can get so much more out of your experience. Just some of the things that I know I wouldn't have done when I was 19 or 18 and gone to university versus what I've done now is like crazy. I joined so many societies last year, and it's because I got on so well with 2 of them. I'm actually on the committee for 2 of them this year, which is really cool. I won. So there's this thing called Bristol Plus. If you do well and you can prove that you positively contributed to your community through achieving your Bristol Plus, you could stand the chance of winning an outstanding award, and only 8 people in the university win it a year. I put myself forward and I won, just seeking out opportunities that a lot of people don't. And I think a lot of people could be like getting this recognition, these awards, this experience, but they don't really think about it. But I like had obsessively researched like all the different cool opportunities that were available, and I was like, I mean, this is something that looks cool that could go on my CV. Why wouldn't I try to do it? I also applied to get funding for an internship in Morocco, and I got that. So I went and did an internship in Morocco over summer, as you may know if you've watched previous videos of mine. And that was also like such an amazing experience. Once again, in theory, anyone could apply for this. Yeah, and I'm just part of some really cool programs this year. I'm going to be a PAS leader, like a student study session leader. I've been put on a mentor program where I'm paired with a Bristol alumni who works in the sector that I'm interested in. They kind of can help guide me on what experience I should gain, so I can also get into the specific role that I'm attaining for. And that's such a cool opportunity. Once again, like just these things that you just need to apply for. I'm not saying any of this to like make myself like seem better than I am as a person, or be like I am so fantastic, but it's more just to reflect like how many cool things you can get out of university if you apply yourself. Anyway, this whole rant was just about how I do think from my experience that these kind of opportunities are things that more mature students, even just people who've taken one gap year, it's the kind of thing that they pursue, and not as much the people who've just graduated high school. A lot of the time you will be more financially stable because you would have worked for a bit and you would have a bit more of a foundational pot of savings, which can help a lot, because I think university can be a really stressful time when it comes to money. I mean, I work a part-time job, but once again, it's only part-time, and if I didn't have my savings behind me, I think I would be really stressed about money all the time. So, I mean, I still have financial anxiety, but in reality, I know I'm okay. I think having that financial stability can actually take so much pressure off of you and allow you to focus more on your studies. And it can also just let you take part in more experiences. Like, for example, there's like the surfing society, and I know a lot of people can't do it because it's just a bit expensive, but I'm really, really lucky in that I do have some savings, and so that if I do want to spend £80 to go surfing in Cornwall for the weekend, I can, because I've earned that money previously and I have the savings. So it allows me to say yes to more things and try out new things. Another pro is finding professors and lecturers less intimidating, like authority figures in general, finding them less intimidating. I think the older you get, the less intimidated people can be by authority, and the more comfortable you are seeking help, getting the assistance you need. I think it can be really hard when you're younger to like have the self-confidence to ask for help when you need it. I think that's so important, especially in university, especially in your first few years. I definitely feel so much more self-assured and self-confident in asking for that help and expressing when I need some sort of guidance with something. And there's a lot of people in my course who I know who don't ask for that help even if they do need it, and it's more just a lack of confidence, worried about like asking a stupid question or something like that. Just naturally, as you get slightly older, the more self-assured you become, which is a huge asset. A lot of the time you would have had, as a mature student, you would have had a good amount of previous work experience. That's not necessarily true, but I think in most cases you've done some sort of work. And I think that extra work experience can be so useful, because in a way you're almost at an advantage for getting part-time jobs or for getting specific internships. Just showing that you have that work experience can reflect really well on you, even if it's not necessarily relevant to exactly the type of internship or traineeship or part-time job that you're going for. It still definitely puts you at an advantage, because it shows that you've been in a working environment, and there are always transferable skills. Like, no matter what it is, like there's always a transferable skill hidden there somewhere. I know for me, it's definitely been really helpful just to have that foundational work experience. And it also just helps knowing how the workplace works in general, because I think you can also apply your degree in a more practical sense. You can think about, if you're doing this for a very specific reason, you can think about how this would practically work, and it's maybe a bit less theoretical. And like I said before, what kind of links to this, knowing why you're going to university, entering it with a clear goal as a mature student, be so helpful, because then throughout your university career, you have a very clear idea of where you're going. You know exactly what kind of experience you need to get most of the time, and you can kind of just angle exactly for what you're going for. I know a lot of people right now are very intimidated by the idea of getting an internship because they don't know what they want to do, which is obviously also sometimes the case for mature students, but I do think they have a bit more of an idea of where they're angling for, what they're angling for, and like kind of streamline their focus a bit more, which is really useful. On another note, you also have a much better sense of self. Once again, it's just this naturally, it ties in with like the self-assuredness. It's like, as you get slightly older, you become more aware of who you are, you have a clearer sense of your identity. I think you're less likely to do things that you would regret in university because you have that stronger sense of self. I think you're just going to gravitate more towards your people. It can be a really confusing time when people start university trying to find friends, and I think there's this crazy mindset where it's like, I just need friends, I just need to find people. And I guess it's a very natural reaction when you move to a new environment. It's like, I just must find people, but it often just leads to people befriending others who they don't actually necessarily have a lot in common with, they don't necessarily get on well with. It's just this desire to have friends and be with people, and that can work really well in the short term, but long term it may not be like very fulfilling relationships and friendships. I do see like a lot of people actually find their true friends later in university, or even outside of university, the more like confident they become in themselves. But as a mature student, as you've already done that work, you've already done that progress, and you've already made friends out of a high school context, you kind of know how to go about it. And so although you might be in a new environment and it might be a bit overwhelming and overstimulating, like I think you're much less inclined to just latch on to some random people and be like, these are my friends. It's definitely more of a slow burn finding friends, but I think you're more likely to find genuine people who you have a genuine connection with, you have common interests, common goals, and you can actually form really solid relationships and friendships with people. Like I truly believe that. I know when I first started, I was so worried. I was like, I'm just gonna be friendless, I think, because the first week, like freshers week in the UK is crazy. It's just people going to clubs for the first time and having all these first time experiences, and I was like, I have been there, I've done that, and I'm not really desperate to rehash these things. That first week I found it really hard to find anyone I really got on with, and obviously because everyone is in such a different like state, different mindset, different wavelength, that's obviously completely okay. Obviously none of this is shade to like younger people. I think it's important to have these experiences and to make mistakes, but I've done that, and that's not the kind of energy I wanted to surround myself with, and I didn't want to just have friends for the sake of having friends. And so I definitely held out. I was like, I'm not gonna like latch onto these friendship groups that aren't gonna be valuable or rewarding to me. And I ended up through like joining a bunch of societies and meeting people with common interests and chatting with people on my course, I ended up finding some amazing friends, and I'm so lucky to call some of them now like some of my closest friends, and that's amazing. And I was really lucky in that I was able to find a lot of master's students who are closer in my age and a few mature students in my course and in societies, and I was able to like kind of make these like pockets of friends everywhere. And I'm so lucky. I have probably at least 12 people in Bristol who I would consider really close friends and who I can reach out to and who I can do fun things with. I did not have to sacrifice any of my self-identity for that to happen. It just kind of worked. It's the self-assuredness and understanding of yourself to allow yourself to make more genuine connections with people, and then also just the fact that, at least for me, I had made so many friends all over the world, and I have some of my close friends still in London, and I knew like that I was gonna be okay even if I couldn't necessarily find really close friends. Like I've got that life foundation. I have really amazing friends, and yes, it would be nice to have more, but I don't need more. I have some amazing people and a great support network in my life already, and so I'm not looking to fill a void. I'm just looking to add to my life if the right person comes along, if that makes sense, friendship wise. That almost sounded like a romantic connection. Yeah, just that mindset makes you less desperate to find people. And yeah, I feel like I went on like this point for a very long time, but I hope like what I was trying to say came across. There's a lot of overlap between all of these pros, but I have put them all as separate things because I do technically consider them to be separate things, but they feed into each other. The last thing that I wanted to say was, due to the confidence, this self-assuredness, I think mature students feel more confident getting more out of their courses, so contributing more in seminars, speaking up, participating more. There's such a huge like stigma around class participation, at least like in the UK, and especially like in my course I've noticed a lot is people really hate like seminar participation. They hate having to like contribute answers or talk about their thoughts on certain topics, just express an opinion. And I think it once again ties into feeling nervous about being judged or having the wrong answer or having not put in the effort or the thought anyway because they're just here for a good time. I know I'm a pretty big contributor when it comes to class discussions because I'm a bit more confident, and I know other girls in my classes have said that they've felt motivated to contribute more because they've seen me contribute, and that's a really good feeling. And I think like as long as you're not like obviously dominating the conversation and like stealing this spotlight from like other people all the time, like I think it can be really conducive to class discussion to actually have someone who's willing to like say the first word and put themselves out there. So yeah, as a mature student, you can be that person. Now I get into cons. Honestly, sometimes I feel like an alien. I mean, I really do sometimes feel like that because I'm not really British and I never grew up here, and the British culture can be really difficult to assimilate to. But also being housed in student accommodation first year with all these 18-year-olds who have very different priorities to me, obviously, can be really intense. I know we're of the same generation, but it really feels like we're like miles apart in mindset just because of the 5-year age gap. I think I find it really hard to find things in common with people because we were in very different life stages in a lot of ways. Like my sense of that was really heightened because I was in student accommodation. I think if you're not going to live in student accom, this wouldn't matter as much, but I guess even on campus, you definitely feel it, and you definitely feel the maturity difference. Like when you overhear certain conversations, or like when you see the stupid shit that some people do, like on campus, people are just getting their university experience, and that's like totally okay. But sometimes I hear about like people's lives and what they're doing here, and I'm like, wow, we're leading very different existences here. We're getting very different college experiences. Yeah, I don't regret living student accommodation. First of all, it was cheap. It's a good way to like immerse yourself in the community. Like, I definitely don't regret it. I wanted that like student experience, but it was definitely a bit rough at times, I have to say. Especially like the fourth time someone like set off a fire alarm in a week for like smoking weed. It was just, there were times where my patience was tested and I felt like such an old person. I was like, wow, I really can't let the kids have a good time. It's just a different experience going to university as a mature student. Like, you don't get the typical university experience. I mean, I guess you can. I'm sure people totally have. But I think because you're in a different stage of life and different mentality, it's really unlikely that that's going to happen. I think I was a bit sad about that initially. I think just because you're a bit less reckless, you're maybe a bit less willing to stay up until 4 a.m. all the time. In a lot of ways, your university experience will be a bit different, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I put it under cons because I think it's something to think about, and I think a lot of people romanticize this idea of going to university, and I know I definitely did. And I did kind of think maybe I could still have that like exact uni experience that I wanted to have, that I'd seen so many people have when they go straight from high school to university. Like, obviously it's not quite the same, it's a little different, I'm a little different, so of course it's not going to translate like that. Yeah, so I put it under a cons, but it's not necessarily a con. It can also, like I said before, it can just be harder to make friends when you're in that stage, especially if you don't like certain British pastimes, like drinking. Like, socializing is always somehow connected to the pub. It's like, we're gonna socialize, let's go to the pub. We're doing something with the society, let's go to the pub. And like the drinking culture in the UK, and especially like the student drinking culture, can be a lot, especially if that's not your thing. Or it can be your thing, but if it's like not your only thing, like if you have interests beyond that, it can also be really hard. The next con can just be like kind of related to existential crisis, feeling like you're being left behind, like you're not progressing fast enough. It can be really hard to see your peers graduating, getting their masters, starting real big jobs, being in full-time employment, maybe even getting like a house. This may just be my ambition and perfectionism talking, and like just my fear of being left behind in general. But I think I definitely felt that on a certain level, and I know rationally I'm where I'm meant to be. I'm really happy with where I am, and I've had some insanely amazing rewarding experiences in my life that I would not trade, just based on like society expectations, and even maybe people in your life's expectations of you. It can definitely be a bit rough feeling like you're behind. Yeah, I mean, I've relatively made peace with it, but it is definitely something to think about, not in a sense of, well, then maybe I shouldn't go to university, but think about in a sense of, okay, well, how can I come to peace with this? How can I feel like I'm not behind? And, you know, it's all about how you perceive yourself compared to others. And yeah, I think that, you know what they say, like, comparison is the thief of joy, and I think that's so true. I think it's just coming to peace with your own path, like where you're going. Yeah, I don't know, but I definitely feel like in this weird midpoint of like not fully relating to a lot of the other people at university who are younger than me, but not also fully relating to my like peers who are already like in full-time employment, already graduated. I'm definitely like kind of caught between both, so it can definitely feel a bit weird at times. It can be really hard getting back into academics after such a long break, and especially like getting into the studying mindset, into like the academic style of writing, doing really intense research. It can be really tiring. I think that's kind of like a short-term con. I think anyone can get back into university at any time and pick everything up again. So once again, that's not to scare you or make you rethink your decision, but it's something to be aware of, that of course in a way that's going to be a big adjustment for you, and maybe it's something that you want to compensate for by doing some mini little courses running up to your course. I know I did like some online diploma course like a few months before, just to like get back into the mindset of like coursework and studying and how to summarize topics and things like that. I'm also just an over preparer. Yeah, at least that way you don't feel as overwhelmed when you start university. You also just have more responsibility. You might have a job or a family or some other commitment, and it can make dedicating time to university really hard, and like balancing family or like your other life commitments versus university can be a bit more difficult the older you get, for sure. Once again, I think if you have a really good support network in your life, it makes it much easier to do this. But yeah, that's another thing that obviously detracts from having a university experience, is balancing these like adult commitments. It's a whole other layer. The next one's kind of stupid, and I think it really just depends on how young you look as a mature student. Oh my god, I fucking hate being condescended to by older years, as in like people in the year above me, for example. I think because I have a baby face, this happens a lot. But whenever last year, I would say I was in first year, people would be like, oh, you're a baby. How are you finding university? Oh, how are you handling it? Oh, that must be so rough, like being away from home. I know some of the time it was meant to be like supportive and sweet, but a lot of the time it just came across as incredibly condescending, and it's such a minor thing. It's more an annoyance than a con, but I had to put it in. I was like, I'm so fucking sick of hearing this shit. It just felt so weird to be so heavily infantilized when I was like 22, 23, had lived alone for like 5 years. I was like, fuck off. Yeah, once again, that's just kind of like a little something to maybe mentally prepare yourself for if you do appear slightly younger. Yeah, get ready to throw hands with anyone who says that to you. Please don't fight anyone. I don't condone violence. That is a joke. And then the last con is it can be really hard to balance your past life with your current life. This is different to the commitments balance, because in your past life, sounds like reincarnation, in your past life you had a life, a job, friends, a very specific routine, a very specific life, and now that all looks very different. A lot of the time people would have moved cities. Like I moved from London to Bristol. My partner now lives in Paris. Like, so maintaining past connections, like with friends, with relatives who you were living with anyone. My partner and I used to live like 5 minutes away from each other, and now we're in different countries. Like, I think balancing your past life or connections that you developed previously while living in the university experience and having new experiences and meeting new people, that can also be really hard, because yes, to a degree, like people just going from high school to university can also experience that, of course, but I think that is very different to having fully built a life for yourself and then leaving that life that you've built for yourself. I think that can be really difficult, and I think it just takes dedication. Like, of course I want to stay in contact with my friends, of course I want to stay in contact with my boyfriend, so it just takes a bit more time commitment, a bit more dedication to those relationships to maintain them, like little trips to London to visit my friends, inviting people to come stay. It can be like really fun and really exciting to be able to share these new experiences with them. Yeah, like just the balance of new people and people who were in your life prior to university. It can definitely be time consuming. It's definitely something to think about. Once again, not necessarily a con, but it's definitely something that is like, these are all things that I think anyone should think about and consider how they're going to tackle before they go to university. And that's all the cons. Once again, I'm not saying any of this with the intent to discourage people from studying as a mature student. If anything, I am firmly encouraging you to do so. Education has no age limit. If this is something that you want to do, you should definitely go for it. Like, no matter what I say, like, you should definitely go for it. Breaking societal norms, going to get a degree when you're slightly older, is the epitome of like knowing yourself, knowing what you want, and not really giving a shit about society expectations. And I love that. I think that's amazing. And if that's something that you want to do, I'm so proud of you, and like fucking go for it, because I know how hard it is to even convince yourself of the idea that it's a good idea, and then convince the people in your life, and then also just get into the university can be really hard sometimes. So I know it's not an easy decision. Most of the time I would say it's the right one. Yeah, once again, like I said, everyone's experience is very different, and like I said, you will likely have different pros and different cons based on who you are as a person. I do think it's good to know what to expect if you're going to be on campus. Obviously, if you're doing your degree remotely, most of this does not apply, but if you are going to be on campus, I was so nervous and I had no clue what to expect coming as a mature student, and these are things that I think maybe would have reassured me and allowed me to prepare myself a little bit more. I've made some amazing friends here who are interested in what I'm interested in, who push me, we push each other, we support each other. I'm actually living with some amazing people this year who are really good friends of mine. And yeah, I'm just so happy with how it all worked out. Like, there's nothing about my current experience that I would change. I feel like I'm involved in all the things I want to be involved in. I'm paying, like, because I'm part of the dance society, I'm paying £3 a session to do ballet classes. I fucking never used to do ballet, and I always romanticized the idea of picking it up when I was older, and now I can. And like, this is what I mean when there's like all these random things that you can just do. I never would have had the time or the money to do this in London because ballet lessons are fucking expensive, but uni price ballet sessions are really cheap. So that's really fun. I'm having the time of my life. Yeah, sometimes I do feel nervous about the fact that I'm only going to graduate my undergraduate degree when I'm 25 and still kind of want to do a master's after that. So there is like this low-grade fear that I'm going to be starting my career too late or a bit late. But I do know I'm also garnering a lot of really amazing experience along my journey. Like, such good experience that I shouldn't have an issue finding a job when I do try find one. And in theory, all of my previous work experience and all my internships should put me in a position where I don't need to start entry level in the sector that I'm going into. I should in theory be able to start a bit higher. Even if I did have to start entry level when I was like 27, that's also not necessarily the end of the world. Yeah, in reality, I wouldn't be happy if I wasn't doing this. And it like a lot of the negatives or the fears is just like my overthinking brain stressing about the future, and I would be doing that anyway no matter what was happening. So it's kind of just normal at this point. Yeah, overall I am really happy with where I am in life. I got good grades last year, I made great friends, I live in a fantastic city in a really cool house. Like, the house is so cool. I have such a nice view. I'm at like the top of Clifton and I have a view of like all down Clifton Hill and it looks beautiful. It's so cool. I had forgotten how much I loved learning and being in that environment, and it feels so good to be engaged in the academic world again and to be stretching those mental muscles I haven't used in years and to be appreciated for being opinionated. Yeah, honestly, this is my vibe, it's my environment. There have obviously been highs and lows. There have been times of stress, of panic, but in a way that is just all the university experience. Maybe I am having the ultimate university experience. In a lot of ways, it's basically a dream come true, and I've been waiting for it for like fucking 3 years. So yeah, it's definitely lived up to expectations, if not exceeded them actually. This got super long, but like I said, first of all, once again, apologies for the voice. I feel like it actually got worse the more I spoke. So that's great, but thank you so much for listening. I hope this was helpful, maybe. And if you have any questions, if you have any advice of your own for people, if you have things that have really stuck out to you in your mature student experience, let me know. I would love to hear about it. Yeah, it's always so fascinating to me to hear about people's different experiences. I hope I didn't sound like too much like a premature grandma in this. Have a lovely day, and we'll hopefully speak soon.